You're just a demon. You're just a demon!
This past week, the new Channing Tatum-led movie, Dog, hit theaters, and it was not what I expected. Before we get started, you clearly like movies and TV shows, so go ahead and make that disgusting, horrible, gross red subscribe button down there a beautiful and gorgeous gray. Come on, all you gotta do is move your little mouse around a little bit, click the subscribe button, and boom, done. Thank you, Sensei. Okay, let's get started with the good. Okay, so going into this movie, I was expecting a very generic buddy type road trip movie where the lead characters hate each other at first, but then learn to love each other by the end. I expected cheesy dog versus human jokes, plenty of roadblocks stopping our leads from getting to their destination, and an ending that tries to be emotional but comes off very forced and makes me shed no tears. And I mean, yeah, some of that's true, but the stereotypes that they did use, they seem to have made better than a lot of other previous works that I've seen, and a lot of them they just ditched overall. And honestly, that is the number one thing that I appreciate about this movie, is that it ditched a lot of the awful dog movie tropes that we see. And something that I think contributed a lot to that is that I really cared for our leads of Briggs and Lulu. Briggs is by no means a perfect person. In fact, I quite disliked him in the beginning of this movie, but as we get to see further into his past and see what makes him the way he is, my appreciation for his character just skyrocketed. And honestly, I can say the exact same thing about Lulu. She starts out with a lot of issues and seems to make every situation worse, but somehow they made a dog's character really transform as well. This movie actually made it so that a dog had character growth without talking or us hearing its thoughts or anything like that. Seriously, incredible character building on all fronts here. Now, before going into this movie, I thought it was gonna be about 90% comedy and 10% drama. What I got was about 40% comedy and 70% drama. And I actually think that that decision catapults this movie into an entire different league. This picture is very focused on the mental health of a man and a dog that have been involved and injured in war. Briggs has such a hard time acknowledging his shortcomings and tries to cover it up with arrogance and humor any chance he gets. And of course, this journey brings him to the point of acknowledging and eventually working on his mental health. And you know what? Yeah, I cried. I did it. I'm not embarrassed about it, okay? I cried. Multiple times. This movie actually hit me really hard because I recently had a family loss, and through it, I actually learned that I'm also not great at acknowledging my emotions. And just like Briggs, I went through a really tough season because of it, so I could really relate to his character. The story and emotion in this movie just worked flawlessly together, and I believed every single feeling our leads conveyed. And before we move on to the mixed, I did want to point out that this movie also did a great job in the runtime department. They got across every message they wanted to, kept it short, and left me wanting more. Now, this movie definitely shoves a lot at you in the last 20 minutes or so, which I think some people probably won't love, but for me, it felt perfect. You have one thing happening after the other, and every time I think I'm done crying, I'm starting up again. This movie kept me engaged the whole time, had a satisfying ending, and left me wanting more. In my opinion, you can't ask for much more than that. Actually, you know what? I can, because if you were to go down right now and smash that like button, man, I'd be happier than a dog that just got a brand new toy. But with that, let's move on to the mixed. And while some of the dialogue and script in this movie are spot on, there were also a couple moments where I felt like I was watching a low-budget Christian movie with not so great writing. While some of this dialogue was really moving, I actually feel that this movie's most memorable moments came from the actions of Lulu and Briggs. Sometimes you don't have to speak a word to get an emotion across the screen, and this movie is a great example of that. And while some of this dialogue was really cheesy, it did help us to understand some of the moments later in the movie that were very important. Also, as mentioned previously, this dog does have its fair share of cliche dog movie moments. Like, there were literally so many roadblocks on their journey, it almost became unbelievable to a point. And there was definitely a scene or two with Lulu getting loose and Briggs chasing her down like all the Beethoven movies. But I mean, it wasn't the worst execution of this that I've ever seen, so that's why I'm putting it on my mixed instead of bad. But with that, let's go right into the bad. There was really only one bad thing in this movie for me, but it's that I really didn't like Channing Tatum's character until about halfway into this film. I mean, the guy was a douche to just about every person he saw, he was so mean to the dog, and he just seemed so smug and arrogant. But what's so interesting and confusing to me about all of this is that while this made the first half of the movie less enjoyable for me, it actually really set the foundation for the second half to be so incredibly moving. As unlikable as he is, we learn that he's really just a broken man that has been through some tough shit and is just trying to get through this life the best he can. But when it comes down to it, I just couldn't get myself to connect or root with him at the beginning, so it is a slight setback. With all this being said, let's move on to my final thoughts. This movie actually blew me out of the water. My expectations were so low, but this story is incredible, the acting is phenomenal, and every feeling they were trying to convey worked the entire way through. This film combined drama with comedy and even a little action to add some spice, and I think it did a lot right. This movie really got its message across to me, and when all is said and done, I think that Dog deserves a grade A. I would actually really recommend checking this one out in theaters if you get a chance, but if you don't, definitely check this one when it comes out on streaming. But of course, this is just my opinion, and I would love to hear yours down in the comments below. What did you think of Dog, or do you still plan on seeing it? Make sure to subscribe for more content like this, and I'll catch you in the next one.